All right. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to the Entrepreneur Motivation Podcast. I am your awesome host, of course, Chris Bello.
CB.
And that's a new intro. I haven't said that one yet. But
I like
today
it.
I've got Dr. Seku Gathers. Did I pronounce that
Seku.
correctly?
Yeah, yeah.
Seku.
Seku.
And
Thank
you
you.
also go by Dr. G
Dr.
sometimes,
G.
right?
Yeah, they call
Dr.
me Dr.
G.
G. Yep.
And for those who haven't heard, I've recently been on Dr. G's show as well. I need to share that with my audience. The
Yeah.
podcast actually just recently came out, and his podcast is called The Truth Prescription Podcast. And of course, the truth will set you free if you let it, right?
If you let it.
If you let it. That's kind of like knowledge is power, only if you apply the knowledge. Because a lot of
I
people
like
think
that.
the knowledge is just power, but not until you do something about it. But
No.
Dr. G, it's great to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm honored, and I feel like I'm right there in Houston with you.
Oh, I know. I feel
And
like I'm over there in New York with you too.
it's right. It was right. And we had such great synergy last time that we definitely had to do this again. So I'm glad, appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk to the listeners a little bit about that entrepreneurial motivation. Let's get
I,
motivated.
I love it. Let's do it. And kind of like we were talking before I started hitting record,
Yeah.
we can go in whatever direction you want. I just love
Yeah.
covering the entrepreneurial journey,
Yeah.
challenges that you overcome, maybe when you decided you wanted to do entrepreneurial stuff.
Mm.
So if I like to kind of start off at the beginning, like what did you want to do when you grew up, like as a kid? Did you have something in mind? Does your life now look like what you thought it would when you were that age?
So let's see. So the funny answer is astronaut. That's what I actually wanted to be
Everyone wants to
initially,
be an astronaut as a
right?
kid, I guess, right?
And then my dad was like, "You can't be an astronaut. You can't. You need glasses. You can barely see. They won't let you in."
Now they
Um,
got LASIK though, right? There you go. You can
right.
be an astronaut.
I know. No, so my grandfather, Azel Brown Sr., and actually my grandmother just passed away like 4 days ago. So
Oh, I'm
it's
sorry to hear about that.
yeah, it's interesting we're talking about him, but he was actually my entrepreneurial motivation. My grandfather owned a pest control business back in the 40s in New York, which was unheard of, especially being African American, number one, and then number two, owning a business. And I just always remember as a little kid, 5 or 6 years old, 7 years old, going into his office and seeing his employees and looking around, and he had his own what is that called, like rat poison and chemical rat insect chemical that he made himself.
Oh, he had his
His
own
basically his own,
creation.
yeah, it's like his own brand of chemical. And it just amazed me, like, wow, this is his office and these are his people that work for him. And
That's
he
awesome.
actually owned the building that the business was run
Jeez.
out of. Yeah, it
In
was
New York, yeah.
yeah, and it was a mixed use. So it was his building, his office on the ground floor, and then he had 3 units above him.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah, I mean, really like way ahead of his time. He spoke, fluent Yiddish, which is crazy, right? He worked for a Jewish guy for about 8 years, and that's how he learned Yiddish. But anyway, that was my motivation. I said, this is really cool. Yeah, so I always kind of kept it in the back of my mind, just in terms of always wanting to do business. And then at some point, I think this was in college. So fast forward to college, I opened up a store. I had a store in college in my room. I lived on the fifth floor, and I called it the fifth floor store. And
The fifth flow
the
stow. I
fifth
like
floor store.
it.
And I made a lot of money that year. And it was interesting because I had been a straight A student up to that point. And I had
Then
already
your
gotten
grades started tanking.
my grades. Once I got to business, my grades tanked, but I had already gotten into medical school. So, but it was just interesting because, we all have a finite amount of energy. So as I was focusing more on my business, my grades dropped a little bit, but I still graduated with a 3.78, which is pretty good because I had a
Not
string
bad
of
at all.
4.0s. Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, I would go to Costco, I would buy stuff wholesale, and I would just mark it up 100, 200%. And I had like hot dogs, candy, chips, juice. I would like microwave the hot dogs and put them in the bun, give you a little ketchup, $1.25. So yeah, it was cool. So I did that in college, and then obviously went to med school. Um, finished med school, went to med school, finished med school. And then after my training, I decided to do emergency medicine because I liked solving problems. Emergency medicine is one of those specialties where anything can come in, right? You can see little babies, you can see 95-year-old, elderly folk, and they all have different problems. So at some point I was like, I'm comfortable. It was probably about 2-3 years after my training. I was like, I'm comfortable enough with all these cases where I feel like nothing is like, I don't run into anything. I'm like, oh my God, what do I do? Like I was
You'd
so
seen it
past
all,
it.
right?
Yeah, it's pretty much seen it all, done it all, had really good training. I trained at Mount Sinai in Manhattan, had really good training. And I was like looking for a business opportunity, right? The entrepreneurial came back, and I started this business called, it was initially called AM/PM House Calls, which was basically,
Morning,
it was a friend, yeah, AM/PM, like day and night. But I initially, when I started the business, it was me going to homes, hotels, and businesses, emergently. If people had, issues or problems and they didn't want to go to the hospital, they would call me. And then after about 2 or 3 years, I hired like other physicians and other practitioners, and we did really well. And I was actually happy with the business. The income was a little inconsistent because of the tourism in New York. There's a actual tourism season that goes from October till around March, and then it kind of slows down a little bit. And I'm sorry, the tourism season starts in like around Christmas, and it usually ends around like April, May, and then it kind of slows down a little bit for the summer, and then it picks back up. So, but I was still fine, and I was happy with the business. And then I got married. So when you get married, and you have a family, you need consistent income, and running around, the city at 3:00 in the morning kind of doesn't work anymore. So as I look back on it, I realize if I could have built a better infrastructure of staff, I might have been able to still run it. But the problem I was finding is that people weren't reliable. Like even with the staff I had, I'd get a call from a hotel concierge, this person's sick. I'd contact one of my doctors. They say they're on their way. And then 2 hours later, the hotel's calling me, where's the doctor? And I'm like, and then I call it, where's the doctor? Oh, my dog ate my homework.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, right.
The business is, I ran into a few HR issues, but,
Yeah.
And then since then, I mean, we can talk about it, a little later if you'd like, but, I've opened up a couple other businesses, and, that's sort of the beginning to, I think I stopped AM/PM in 2013, around there.
Okay. Wow. So you have quite a bit of entrepreneurial experience and stories growing up and with the Fifth Flow Stowe. I love that because you have to pronounce it that way. I have to I can't say fifth floor store because it's Fifth Flow Stowe.
Fifth Flow Stowe. And then we had a little menu I would hand out. It was great.
That's perfect. And I tell people in my story where I can think back to entrepreneurial things as a kid. My friend and I would do magic shows, and we would charge kids like $1 or something.
Okay.
We didn't really even charge anybody, and I think we made like $10 just because of some parents pitied us and gave us some money. Kids didn't have money or need money when you're in third grade or whatever.
Yeah.
I can't even remember how old I was. But then there was a period in my life where things just kind of slowed down. So like in college, I never really did any entrepreneurial things. So
Right.
I'm really envious every time I meet people who've always had that and it's been on the back of their mind.
Yeah.
Because it allows you to see things creatively and to see opportunities and at least try to pursue them. And you might not stick with all of them, obviously, but each one serves as a learning lesson for the next thing that you go on and do.
That's right. Chris, I actually forgot there was one other impactful experience that I just remembered.
Yeah.
When I was around 13, there was this huge blizzard in New York, New Jersey area, and I just happened to be staying with my cousin that weekend, who lives in southern part of Jersey, and we were sitting there. It was like snow up to probably it was like probably, if I'm honest, probably 2.5 feet, 3 feet of snow. There's a lot of snow.
That's crazy.
And he and I went out and we shoveled people's driveway for about 5 hours. and we came back with $150 and we
Wow.
split it. And so I was like, man, I just made $75 in 5 hours, cash tax free. This is amazing. And there was this Nintendo controller I wanted to buy at the time that cost like $70. So I was like, this is perfect. So that also, just the idea that you could, because at the core, I'm really a creative, right? I do music, I
Yeah.
do films. So the fact that I could like do something and then create these funds off of my activity, like I didn't have to wait for anybody to give. I was like, oh, this is great. So that was the other experience that got me really like with the entrepreneurial bug.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I heard something similar on another podcast recently as well, where they were saying people should teach their kids how to earn things instead of just getting money for cutting the grass or whatever.
Yeah.
They should try to come up with entrepreneurial things, selling knickknacks or cutting some lawns or whatever they need to do to make money.
Yeah.
Because whenever they go to buy something, it means so much more now that they actually created that value and therefore the income for themselves.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you never really know what it takes to get money, right? If your parents always buy you stuff, and I love my parents, they're great, and they gave me everything I ever wanted. They kind of spoiled me in a way where I never understood the true value of the things that I got because they would just buy it for Christmas or my birthday. And I never really understood like what value was tied to it. Like how much time do you need to trade at minimum wage job to earn
Wow.
a Nintendo 64 controller? I didn't know until I was 16. And then I'm like, wow, I got to work 8 hours pushing carts to buy one video game. Like it makes you think twice about buying that game.
Yeah. No, it's
It
important.
also makes you think about how to generate more per hour, I guess, right?
Right. Yeah. It's really about the income. I'm a fan of Grant Cardone. I don't know if you know him. Your business.
Oh yeah.
He's a real estate guy, so you should know him.
Yeah. He's up on my vision board up here too.
Okay. Yeah. I love Grant. And Grant always says that, people think problem is your savings account or, problem is income. You need to make more money. People think, oh, these taxes, screw the taxes.
Yeah. If you're making enough money, it don't matter.
Make more money. So yeah. You make a great point. I think that and also just monetary literacy and education is super lacking. I mean, I wish I would have learned.
Really
My
is.
parents gave me a lot, but like I'm just learning now, like in the last year, like real nuts and bolts money management. And I'm 43. Like that's a little crazy.
Yeah. And the cool thing is that, I always say it's never too late to learn. For example, the other day I was speaking at a real estate event. It was a kind of an investor networking event. And I went to go speak for about an hour on my experience in that and how I've learned. And really, it was like a lead generation strategy for me to find clients. I was surprised because I was like, man, I don't know if I'm going to be able to speak for a whole hour. I didn't practice the slides. I just put together 7 or 8 slides and I was like hoping for the best. And luckily with the weekly podcast, my speaking skills have gotten really pretty good compared to when I first started.
Yeah.
I have a little bit more that I'd like to go and get better at public speaking and get on stage and bring more energy. But compared to where I was when I started, I knocked it out of the park and everybody was like, wow, you really impressed me. Wow. But there was one couple in the back and I could see at first they were a little skeptical because, I looked young. Like, what do I know about real estate? And she found so much value, her and her husband, that they actually sent me an email like, hey, we're so jealous that you're already so far into this and you're so young. I wish we started at your age. And I was like, hey, it's never too late to learn. You come across new things all the time. It's just a matter of being willing to learn, right? The age doesn't matter. You're always pushing yourself in new areas of your life. So I said, thank you for reaching out. I'm glad you found value, but don't get jealous because I just met someone. I just met a kid and I interviewed him recently. At 19, he was doing 6 figures a year in apartment locating. Wow. And when I interviewed him, he's like 21 now. He's wearing a nice big old Rolex. And I'm like, wow. See, compared to that kid, I'm 29 now. And I'm like, correct. I wish I started when I was 19. Yeah. I was playing 8 hours of video games a day. So it's all relative. And I really do wish they taught the financial literacy. Like Rich Dad, Poor Dad should be required reading in high school.
Right. Yes.
Just to open up people's minds.
Have you heard the rumor that that book is not real, that he never really had a rich dad or a poor dad. Information is, it's a great information aside, but have
Yeah,
you heard that
I
rumor?
never heard about the rumor, but I mean,
Okay.
even if it was, it's kind of like, I guess, more like a parable, right?
Yeah.
That's how I would see it, because the value in that is true. I know plenty of people who have the PhD and they're lifelong students and they never apply what they learn, and it's
Hmm.
crazy to me, right? So
Yeah.
I actually hadn't heard that rumor. I mean, where'd you hear that at?
I read that probably 7, 8 years ago, that he was
Wow.
starting, people were starting to scrutinize him because when they started doing research into this other father, they couldn't find it.
I mean, the book's still such a popular book and it's on so many people's top lists. And the
Yeah.
thing is, it's so simple. Nothing in that book is necessarily rocket science or like amazing. It's all kind of common sense, but the way
Yeah.
it's worded, in the simplicity and the graphs and everything, the way they draw like the assets and the liabilities,
Yeah.
it really forces you to reframe your way of thinking entirely. And I think that to me is what was, even, whether or not it's true doesn't really
I
matter
agree.
to me, because I got just as much value out of it. Because I'm like,
Well,
okay, cool, I don't care about his rich dad or poor dad. I've learned what I needed to,
yeah.
and I can apply that to where I am now.
Yeah. No, look, information is information, and it's great. It's
Yeah.
great information. I just, I didn't know if you had heard that, but I agree with you that it was a transformational book when I read it. I think I read it in college. It's a transformational book. And
Yeah.
no, I actually read it after college because there was this guy in my med school class who was buying property in med school. And I was thinking he was taking his loan check and using his down payments to buy these row houses in DC. I went to med school at George Washington. And at the time I was saying to myself, dude,
What are you doing?
what are you doing? Like, class is hard enough. Like, this stuff is driving me crazy. You got time to go. But when we graduated, I think he sold his place. He ended up netting like $600,000 cash in
Wow.
2002. So, these types of things, it's a mindset you have to be taught. And he was way ahead of the curve in terms of his knowledge. Somebody taught him something.
Absolutely. And then
Yeah.
he actually took what he learned and then applied it and took action.
Right. It's funny. He leveraged the leverage. So he leveraged his student loan debt, to purchase other debt, which eventually he was probably able to use to pay off med school and then still have some money left over, which is crazy.
Yeah. And even going back to the financial stuff and the literacy, I've now, with social media and Instagram, if you're following the right people, you can learn little nuggets of wisdom all the time.
Yes.
Back in the day, I don't remember MySpace. I never really learned anything like wealth wise or Instagram, like Instagram posts do today. So
Yeah.
I'll see people talking about how a lot of people buy depreciating assets. They'll buy a car.
Mm-hmm.
And the way the wealthy do it, typically they'll buy the asset first, like an income producing property, and they let the money from that property purchase the depreciating
Correct.
liability, I guess, of the car. So little steps like that, where, hey, I want to find an income producing property to buy my toys instead of buying the toy, and now you're stuck with a mortgage payment and a car payment, and neither of them are making you money. It's just a different way of thinking entirely
Yeah.
that can set you up for success versus, I never took any class in school that taught me anything like that. So
Yeah. There's no class in college. It's like how to make $1 million.
right. But I remember in PE, I learned the formation of a volleyball court, like all these things that you had tests on. And I'm just like, I never learned about financial literacy, but I had a finance class with a bunch of questions. I remember one question in a finance test about a certain agreement that was done. And it was like, the agreement was done in this year under an applewood tree. And you had to know which one was the most false. I just remember that question being so stupid because I got it wrong and I was so upset that was a test question. And I'm like, why do I need that information? Here I am, 2019, and I still haven't found a single day that I've needed that piece of information.
Yeah.
That made me
Yeah.
lose 4 points on that test. I'm still upset about it.
High school or college?
That was in college.
That was college.
That
Not
was
to
in
mention the
college.
tuition you're paying. Going back to Grant Cardone, if you listen to him, he's kind of, he poo-poos college. He went to college, but he kind of poo-poos it. And
I do too sometimes. I mean, I've got my school ring somewhere. It doesn't fit anywhere because I lost some weight and I need to resize it. In Texas, like Texas A&M, the school that I went to, the ring is pretty important in terms of the network. if I see someone else wearing the ring, it's like a conversation starter of, oh, where'd you
Wow.
go to school? Or I mean, what degree did you study, and what
Sure.
dorm did you live in on campus?
Sure.
So it's big over here, but still, I sometimes I'm not sure, if I would do college again, just because I legitimately did not learn anything in college that I'm using now. Like I guess basic English, I'm good at English, cool, but
Basic.
business calculus, how to do a matrix or whatever and use a graphing calculator, I can't say I've ever used that a single day of my life.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a lot. I mean, obviously, med school was important, and there was definitely
Yeah.
application to that to what I'm doing. But yeah, there was a ton of stuff. Even physics, like physics was a pain. I got an A, but it was a pain, man. And I don't use
Yeah.
none of
And I
it.
guess it depends too. I'll always say it depends. Like if you're going to be a heart surgeon, you probably should go to school, right?
Yes,
You probably
yes,
need some practice and to have that supervision. But if you're going to do something like real estate, I always joke all the time, you don't need a degree to walk through a house that's falling apart. You just need a contractor who knows what the repairs are going to be.
yeah,
And you need to know how to run your numbers to make sure you're buying it at the right price.
right.
So
Basic math,
basic math and
right.
and I guess self-education too, because you got to know what it is that you want to learn. And now with the internet, you can learn anything you want if you just stay focused, because you can get information
Oh my
overload and spend
gosh,
all day learning 50 different things that won't help you move the needle in your business, right?
right, right. Yeah, no, it's true.
Man, let's talk about your podcast. how
Yep.
how long ago did you start that, and how have you seen the growth lately? What's your favorite part and your least favorite part of podcasting so far?
Good question. Well, I remember when I was interviewing you, you've had a ton of growth. I was jealous. I was like, this guy
Oh
went
man.
from 0 to 100,000 in no time.
And I told
Um,
you, I was like, I honestly don't even know how.
well, my show, Truth Prescription, it's been heading into it'll be 4 years in April.
Okay, awesome.
April, yeah, and
And you do a weekly, is it weekly show?
it's a bi-weekly show,
Bi-weekly.
and
Okay.
I'm sorry, not bi-weekly, bi-monthly show.
Okay.
And last month we actually had our largest number of downloads. We're at
There
1,400.
we go.
Yeah,
Nice.
so I was happy
Congrats.
about that. Um, my favorite part is really just this: is talking to people, is you
That's
know
so fun. Yeah.
extracting the information. And before actually talking to them, I really enjoy the investigative process of finding out who they are at the core, and really trying to, I listen to their interviews and I really try to ask them questions they haven't been asked, but I really try to get a real understanding of, like, what is this person at the core? What's their thesis? If I was able to, like, open their chest up
Right.
and look at their heart, like, what's
What would you
there?
find?
Yeah, like, what's
Yeah.
at the core of this person? I enjoy that process, just that really just getting down to the quintessential nature of a person, and then having them share their experience and knowledge with the listeners.
That's so interesting. And just like you said, my favorite part is connecting with people. The fact that we're both sitting here having this amazing conversation with pretty good internet connection today, I haven't had any issues at
I know.
all. Like I could see you on video, real time. We could
Yeah.
send messages, and we're recording this to later share with our audience via YouTube or Facebook or
Yeah.
LinkedIn or podcast format. It's just incredible. And you may be learning new things and surrounded by influences in your part of the US that I don't have here, right? And so
Right.
we get to quickly share ideas and brainstorm, because I may see some eureka moment here that no one in your sphere has had, and I can share that with you, and like, vice versa.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. The exchange of ideas is great. And what ends up happening too is, for people listening that may want to do a podcast one day, you end up meeting people that you otherwise may not have met. And
So true.
and that alone is valuable. I mean, life's all about relationships, and you can do a little bit, but to really get the success that you need people to that you can buy into their, what their goals are, and they can buy into what your goals are, and you work together to make them happen. So
Yeah, that's
yeah.
so important. And just like you said, I mean, even if I were to go to New York now, I remember we talked about this. I was born in New York, but I hadn't been back until I think 2015.
Okay.
I grew up in Houston, in Texas. My family moved down here. Both my brothers were born here. But I remember when I went there, there's so many people everywhere. The subways, the streets, the street performers.
Yeah.
Like even if I were to spend 3 months there, the chances of me meeting you or sitting down and getting
Right.
to know you would
Yeah.
be so slim. I
Yeah.
might open the door for you or say hi or something or excuse me. Actually, no, y'all in New York are kind of mean, right?
Right.
Y'all don't say like y'all don't hold the door open.
I might even
Um,
look at you. I might be like this
you might be like,
on my
yeah,
phone. Right. Right.
dude. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So in
true.
Texas, people like to hold the door and they're like, thank you. And in New York, I know it's just like, all right, everyone's going real fast. And I kind of like that a little bit where took some getting used to, but I got used to it quickly where I'm like, cool, I don't have to talk to anyone, headphones in,
Right.
and just go to where I need to be.
Yeah.
Whereas here it's a little more like I'll take my headphone out and be like, because I know they're going to say, here you go, or thank you, or good morning, or something.
It's nice.
Got to try to say something nice back, but that Southern hospitality or whatever. But long story short, I guess I probably wouldn't have met you even if I stayed in New York for a year studying.
No.
Whereas this podcast has been able to connect us. And of course, Jeannie connected us. I
That's right.
previously interviewed her as well on another show. So that's awesome to hear. Like, where do you see the future of your podcast and like connections? Do you strategically pick guests that you want to connect with, or are you like kind of open to different people at the moment? Because that's a
As
question I have for myself.
Yeah, as I've gotten a little bit more experience and as the show has grown, and as I'm really crafting the vision. And vision, I mean, the vision is the vision, but it requires some tweaks here and there.
Yeah.
I am being very selective about who I interview. Um, like first Bello, your message is not for everybody, right?
Right.
And so if you really want your audience when they come, you want them to feel at home. Like, all right, I'm sitting down, I got my earphones in, I'm about to hear Chris, and I'm in a good place. And I feel the same way with my show, that when I want my listeners to always feel they're in a safe place and that they're going to receive a certain thing when they come, which for me is understanding how using the truth can set you free. Not only just set you free, but it can help you in business, it can help you in life, it can help you in your personal life. When you ignore truth, you get stuck. And when you
Right.
accept it, you're able to move through to the next thing. And so, all the entrepreneurs and business people and artists that we talk to, they give their perspective on that. So yeah, and I'm sure you do too. I get, people reaching out to me on Instagram that,
Try to be
hey,
on the show.
hey, can I be on your show? Blah, blah. And, sometimes I look at their profile, I'm like, all right, this fits. And sometimes it doesn't fit.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'm feeling that too now where I get so many. I can't even use my personal email anymore because somehow
Oh, wow.
there's a way for people to figure out what email is tied to your website. And now I get like 10, 15 emails a week of people wanting to be
Wow.
on the show. And sometimes it's not the person directly, it's like an agency who's trying to book whoever it is that they're representing. Right. So it gets a little overwhelming, especially because, like you, I've got other business stuff that
Right.
is kind of my priority. The
Yeah.
podcast is very important to me and I love it, but at the same time, I've been doing it 2 years, pro bono at the bot, out of the kindness of my heart. I haven't really
Right. Out of
monetized
the
it yet. So
love, right.
it's like how much time can I spend on that when that's not necessarily paying my mortgage right now? So you've got to prioritize. And at the same time, like I feel bad not being able to get back to everybody, but I have to make sure to do that Pareto principle and focus on the 20% of the people that 80% or will have 80% of the value for my audience, if that makes
Right.
sense.
No, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
You and I talked about this on the last show, but the miracle equation and the whole and how Elrod and
The miracle
the
morning and the
morning
routines.
and how important the savers, how important being focused in your daily activity is. You mentioned it earlier. It's so easy to get scattered.
So
So
easy.
much information, but if you have a regimen and you lock in that rhythm, success starts to become more easily attainable. So yeah.
Absolutely. And even it's about getting down to the nitty-gritty and like I guess it could be overwhelming because people think that it's hard. It has to be super complex what you're doing, but it can be extremely simple. I just recently went to a training event in real estate in Dallas over the weekend, like maybe a month ago.
Okay.
And one of the takeaways was that it's about working by referral, using your network, trying to get referrals out of friends and previous clients and whatnot. And it could be as simple in real estate, for example, as every single day, just make 5 phone calls, talk about real estate, write 5 notes, 5 handwritten notes and send
Right.
those to previous clients, check in, see how they're doing. And
Yeah.
then like they have something called pop buys. I heard it as Popeyes, like the chicken at first, but it's called pop dash buys. And it's just whenever, I've never done this before until recently with real estate, where you just pop by and say hello unannounced and kind of bring something of value. It could be
Mm.
little cakes, skeleton cakes for Halloween, whatever, or Thanksgiving's coming
This
up. You could do something, right?
this is for potential clients. The
Yeah, this is
Popeyes.
more this is more on the retail side, like the buyers and sellers versus the wholesaling investment side, because that
Sure.
you usually get those leads off market by sending voicemail drops or text messages or direct mail. But for people that I know, like we spoke before we started air or recording, I've got a lot of high school and college friends that are buying houses now, so
Yeah.
that would be more appropriate for them. Maybe stop by their house on a weekend and just drop something off if they're there, or say, use it as a conversation starter to be like, to keep in touch with your clients
Sure.
instead of just doing that deal and forgetting about them. And 3 years later, they sell the house and they forgot about you because you haven't stayed in touch. And then you're
Right.
like, wait, I thought you were going to call me. And they're like, oh, I forgot you were in real estate. That's right.
That's right.
Yeah.
That is so
So,
funny.
so it could be something super simple, like just make your calls every day.
Yeah. 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 Exactly. It's consistency, daily consistency.
Daily consistency.
And it can be like you said, as little as 5 or 10 minutes. But I think there's something special about, you know, having something, an idea or a concept constantly in your mind.
Right.
And that does something. I don't know. I can't explain what it does, but it does something. When things are in your mind, they start to manifest themselves. And so if you're thinking about, like, if you want to be a real estate guy and you're thinking about real estate for 3 minutes and the other 3 minutes you're on YouTube, then looking at cat videos, then you're probably not going to be successful in real estate.
Yeah, that's probably not going to bring me any leads, but I think I've heard it said from Ed Milet. If you know Ed Milet, he talks about the RAS, the reticular activating system or
Yeah.
something, or
Yeah.
activation system. And kind of like what you said, when you're focused on something, you start to see that everywhere. Like if you wanted to buy, I remember in high school, I wanted a Mustang so bad for my first car. And I started to see them everywhere. I'm like, oh, look, there's one. There's a Cobra. I'd know the difference between the GT and the Cobra and the
Wow.
different spoilers and all this stuff. Now I don't even care about cars much at all. I'm just like, whatever. It's got four
Right.
wheels and good gas mileage. Like, that's all I
Right.
need.
4 to drive, 1 to hold. That's right.
Exactly. But at that time, I was just like, starting to notice it everywhere. And now I'm starting to focus on things like, money. I have friends who have the check written to themselves with $1 million and a certain date,
Interesting.
and they
Okay.
keep it with them everywhere in their wallet. I think
I
Jim
like
Carrey
that.
talked about that too.
I didn't
And
see that interview. Jim Carrey talks
yeah,
about that. Oh, I got to
he
check that
talks
one out.
about that, where he had the check, and it's a pretty cool story if you look it up. And again, I kind of love these stories and I take them for truth just right off the bat. I don't need to see proof, and it could be fake or whatever. But I remember seeing a video of Jim Carrey talking about how he wrote the check to himself to be worth $10 million or $1 million or whatever by a certain date. And then I think the movie that did it for him was Dumb and Dumber, maybe, if I
Mm-hmm.
remember correctly.
Yeah.
And he says that he got like the exact amount that he had on his check from that movie or something.
Wow.
Like,
Wow.
I don't know about to the penny, but like it was a really
Yeah.
cool story and
That's
powerful,
great.
because when you start to focus on those huge goals and the things that even you're not even sure how you're going to accomplish them, things start to align themselves in your life, and you'll start to meet the right people, make the right decisions that will start to guide you towards that.
Yeah.
Which kind of goes to what we were talking
That's
about
entrepreneurial motivation in itself.
right there.
It's
Yeah.
funny, guys that are listening that are entrepreneurs or want to be entrepreneurs. This stuff sounds a little hokey and a little crazy, but trust me, if you try
It
it,
works.
you're gonna like it. Trust me,
Yeah.
it works.
If we've never seen something, it's hard to imagine, that it could be possible. Like
Mhm.
if we've never been worth $10 million, like I have on my laminated goal sheet,
Yeah,
it's very difficult to picture what having that money would be like, because it's not my reality.
right.
But at the same time, I could say that with the amount of money I'm at now. There was one point in time, and we talked about this before as well, where you thought a certain amount, like maybe 65 grand was a
Right.
lot of money, or
Right.
30 grand or 20 grand.
Right.
And as you start to level up and you meet other people who treat 20 grand like you treat $1,
Right.
it changes your perspective, and you're like,
Correct.
wow, maybe I need bigger goals than to make 70 grand a year. Maybe I can make it
Right.
70 grand a month,
A
or
month, right?
what about a day?
Right, right.
Looking at what Jeff Bezos is worth now, I can't even fathom that amount of money.
Oof. A
It's
lot of
crazy.
cash divided by
Yeah,
two, though, because you know
that's
you
true.
got
I think didn't that like make her like one of the
yes,
richest women in the world?
yes,
Dang,
150 billion or something crazy,
that's
100
so
billion.
much money.
Hey,
So
listen,
I'm gonna
she
tell my
put
girlfriend I'm gonna go find me a sugar mama.
hey, she put her time in, so
That's true.
that's
But
crazy.
I mean, all jokes aside, it's amazing what happens when you set your mind to something and you
Yeah.
really start to dream big and focus on that.
Yeah,
So
I
I
mean, Bezos was just like he told his wife, "Listen, I want to open up a bookstore online," and
yeah.
she was like, "Huh?" And I mean, that's how it started. I want to sell books online, and he started selling books. You know,
And look how
books
long he
in
did
his
it. It
car.
wasn't an overnight success.
No,
It's
mm-mm.
not like 2 months later, oh, Amazon is what it is today. Like
Yeah.
it's incredible to see where they've come. And I always use that example. Jeff's up on my vision board too.
Oh yes. Okay. Cool.
I've got a quote up here that says, "Be stubborn on vision, but flexible on details." I love that.
Okay. Yeah,
And
I like
apparently
that.
he said that. I'm sure a lot of people have, but stubborn on vision, but flexible on details. So you need to know what it is that you want. And maybe what you're trying now isn't going to be the thing to get you there. But as long as you have what it is that you want at the top of your mind, at the front of your focus,
Yeah,
you can find different ways to figure out how to get there.
for sure. Yeah, 100% agree with that. 100%. Flexibility is super critical. Super
Absolutely.
critical. You know, as entrepreneurs, a lot of times we want to be in control of everything. And, you know, we're like, no, it's got to be this way because I have this vision and and it's nonsense, you
Sometimes
know.
life doesn't want it to happen your way on the
Yeah.
first try.
Yeah. And listen, this whole journey with entrepreneurship is all about managing catastrophes and disasters and disappointments.
Firefighting, yeah.
You know? So,
Constant
you
firefighting
know,
every day.
you can ignore that big explosion in front of your face if you want, but it's gonna burn and it's not going out until you put it out or you drive around it or whatever the case is, you know. So
Yeah.
you have to be flexible, you know, you have to be flexible.
You
Yeah.
definitely do. So now that I guess we're getting towards the end of the year, I know a lot of people are talking about goal planning. Have you started your goal planning for 2020? And if so, what's your process for coming up with goals and evaluating how you've done this year?
Um Goal planning. Well, I interviewed a personal assistant today. So
Awesome.
uh,
Okay. Making
that
progress.
yeah, so I'm definitely making progress. Yeah, my thing for this year is I just want to get hyper granular with my schedule. Um, my schedule is after after reading the Miracle Equation, has gotten better in the last couple months. I've been able to do a little bit more, but I know I can be a little bit better. I can be a lot better. So just my goal really is to automate all the things that as much as possible, all the things that because I've got like a ton of stuff that I'm responsible for. So to automate as much of that as possible,
Yeah.
and to including someone who's listened at the beginning on Sunday night, the person sends me my schedule for the week,
I love that.
and I'm done. I just focus on my schedule, and that includes everything: that working out, meetings, um, you know, business meetings, working in the emergency department or working in the clinic, whatever's going on. Because for me, I can really see how once a rhythm is set, it's like music. Once the rhythm is set, and if you're playing to the beat, and we'll just say of successful entrepreneur, once you catch the rhythm, you can ride it. You can ride it on out, but you've got to be consistent. The rhythm is the consistency. That's my focus is daily consistency with my schedule, waking up 5 a.m., working out, meditation, education, doing what I need to do for my kids, and then starting my day. And that involves spending a little bit of time on each of those things that I'm involved in, giving it the energy so that it can, it can propel forward. So, and then
Yeah.
also that's one thing. And also I will have a goal to by the first quarter of 2020, to purchase a business, to actually purchase
Okay.
a business that's already running,
Awesome.
to help with providing me some more income so that I can pull back from the some of the other things I'm doing, and I can really focus on because basically time is valuable, right? So
Right.
if I need to spend, I'm just making up a number, 90 hours a month physically working someplace, that's 90 hours a month that I'm not able to spend on my own projects. And
Right, right.
not only my own businesses, but looking at real estate opportunities and all these things. It's time. And so I want to be able to leverage a business for basically time, something turnkey, something where I can hire a manager and put them in there. And so, yeah, so those two things, getting really granular and really hyper focused with my time, and, hopefully automation and a personal assistant will help with that. And then,
Yeah.
purchasing a business.
That's awesome. I'm jealous. I don't have the personal assistant yet. I do have a virtual assistant who's extremely helpful, but
Okay.
even that requires a personal assistant or virtual assistant or any kind of assistant, any kind of employee or colleague that works for you or is doing stuff for you. It still requires training, right? Because they're
Yes.
not supposed to read your mind and know what it is that you
No.
want to do and what you
Yes.
prefer.
Yes.
So even in that, it's not like you just hire someone and your schedule is magically perfect,
Done.
right? Yeah, like, oh, cool. You got it all right on the first try. So that's my biggest challenge, is actually setting the time aside to properly train and spit out what's in my brain, or like get it down on paper and then add processes and everything, and then hand that to somebody and make it kind of reality and seamless and everything. But
Is your virtual assistant here in the States, or are they in India or one of these other Philippines or something like that?
yeah, mine's actually based out of the Philippines. How about
Okay.
yours? Is yours going to be located?
This person lives in New York, so I told her
Awesome.
probably be like 80% virtual, but there are some
Yeah.
times when I need like random, like, can you like return this Amazon thing? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like
Yeah.
random stuff. Um,
That's like 4 Hour Work Week, Tim Ferriss stuff, right? Like
yeah,
outsourcing every little part of your life that you don't want to have
that
to
you
deal with.
don't have to deal with if you don't have to deal with it.
I love that.
Um, how have, because so I looked into it, and sorry listeners, we're going to digress a little bit, but
Yeah, we could go. However,
I looked into the virtual a little bit, and how has it been with them? Are you having them respond emails, or like answer emails for you?
I haven't quite gotten to that level yet.
Okay,
And there's some, I know Tim Ferriss talks about it in 4 Hour Work Week, right? Of some agencies that work for you, and sure, they might have like your credit card info for certain purchases, but you can set limits. And then, because that security is always an issue or concern, right? Like I
of
don't really
course,
feel comfortable sharing a ton of my passwords, especially if it's a big account that has a lot of sensitive information in it.
sure,
So I haven't had anyone do the email part yet.
okay,
My vision was, especially for the podcast bookings, that I already even have an email address for it, for the booking assistant for my show. And the idea is that I'll eventually outsource that, where incoming requests can be scheduled through my assistant, and he can make sure it doesn't overlap with other things on my calendar,
got it.
and maybe even vet the potential interviewees to make sure
Ah,
that they be a good fit. But of
right,
course, that means I have to define it so that I'm not mad if he books somebody who I'm like, dude, this guy or
right,
girl isn't a good fit, you know?
right. They don't even own a business.
Yeah. Is there anything in particular on your mind, or anything you want to talk about or share with the audience entrepreneurially, or?
um, I think I'll say this. This is for a message for the entrepreneurs who are just starting. If you have entrepreneurial thoughts in your mind and your heart, and you think it's something you want to do, just simplify it. Business is not complicated, right? All businesses is taking something and selling it for more than what you paid for it, right?
Yeah.
And if that's a product, then that's a product. But if you're selling a service, then you sell your service for more than it costs you to provide this service. It's not difficult. Now, obviously, there's promotion involved, there's relationships involved, there's time, there's developing your not audience, but your customer base.
Hmm.
But at its very core, very simplistically, that's all business is selling something for more than what you purchased it for, what you paid for it.
Right.
That's it. So don't be discouraged. Don't get crazy. You don't need an MBA. You just need entrepreneurial motivation. That's it.
Exactly.
That's all you need.
Motivation, simple goals that you can execute on daily that actually push you towards what it is, your big goals.
Yeah, that's a good point. I have a friend of mine who's a interior designer, and she works with somebody, but she wants to start her own business. And I actually told her that very thing. Like, it seems gigantic and monstrous and unsurmountable, but you just take out a piece of paper, even if it's 50 things, you
Just start
write
writing
down
them
those
down.
50 things. What are the steps for me to get from, where I am now to where I want to be, if it's 50 things? And then you just do one thing a week. In a
Yeah.
year, you'll be done.
And if you're not sure what those things need to be, meet with someone who has accomplished what you want,
Sure,
buy them coffee or go to a networking event or have
sure,
a mutual friend introduce you,
sure.
and they will be able to tell you what some of those things need to be. Because it, kind of like what we talked about before, if you've never had $10 million before, how can you imagine having that?
Yeah.
Well, meet with someone who has it and figure out
Right.
what they did, because
Right.
chances are they figured things out, and they can save you time if you just kind of use them to shortcut the knowledge. You can't shortcut the work or the success, I guess, but you can at least shortcut your way to figuring out the right steps to take.
Yeah, and there's so many. Even if you can't meet the folks in person, there's so many mentors you can meet through YouTube.
Yeah.
Just type in, millionaire mindset. You'll get
Millionaire advice.
50 videos of different people who have done it, and some of the interviews are good, some are not that great. But the
But it's
point
all
is,
free.
it's free, right? And you're interacting and you're getting a sense of, what does this really take to do what I want to do? So it's a
Yeah.
great point. It's not like it was even 10 years ago. Um, trying to, like, if I wanted to meet Tony Robbins, I had to pay $5,000 to go to one of his sessions. Well, now I may not meet him in person, but there's so much, content out there that I can grasp onto, that I can, get a lot of what I would have gotten for the 5,000 for free, and then decide, oh, okay, well, do I actually want to go see him and, be trained by him? So,
Yeah. And a lot of times you get so much value out of the free thing that you want to support whoever created it,
yes,
and you'll
right.
be willing to pay. So I've done that
Yeah.
plenty of times where I got the free thing, or I had the free trial and I loved it, or I went to a conference and I bought somebody's book or I bought their course because I resonated with their message. They came from a place of value and not trying to hard sell you. They legitimately just put it all out there and gave you way more than, I guess the thing is that I hear is to provide way more value. Like if you're going to charge $20, give $100 of value, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That's
that
right.
is what determines how much people will be willing to pay. And the
Yeah.
numbers could be different. You could
Yeah.
provide $1,000 of value and charge $200.
Yeah. The other thing I'll say about business is, I realized this recently, probably in the last 3 months, like, people buy what makes them feel good.
Yes.
So I'll say that again. People buy what makes them feel good. So whatever you're doing, it's providing value is one thing. So that helped to trigger that memory. But whatever it is, like, why does real estate work? People, it makes them feel good to walk in a home, that's theirs. That, maybe no one else in their family has ever owned a home, and now they can. Even me, I've owned, homes before people in my family owned. When I bought my last house, that was my third or fourth house, I still felt good. It made me feel good. And I think if you focus on that, a good friend of mine who's in sales, he calls it bringing delight. He wants to bring delight to his clients, right? Shout out to Jeff. If you bring delight and you make people feel good, it will sell. I mean, not to get too crazy here, but why do you think the porn industry does so well? It makes
Yeah, you're
people
right.
feel good. You know what I mean? Not that you need to sell porn, but in anything you do, whether it's real estate or, in my case now, podcast studio, the studio that we really focus on giving people a seamless, frictionless experience, so that they feel good, right? And that's what it's really about.
Yeah, I've got another thing. I have so many quotes up on my vision board I got to glance over. But if you heard of like Russell Brunson and ClickFunnels,
Yes,
here I have a
I know
quote
him.
that says, "People don't buy what they need; they buy what they want." Which is,
I
I
like
mean,
that.
I think people buy what they need too. Like you need toilet paper. I buy toilet paper, but I
Right.
want the good toilet paper that's not going to break.
Uh-huh.
But even then, like the kid who wants the Xbox One or whatever the Xbox is on, I don't even know. I haven't played Xbox in forever. A lot of people want things, and they'll do what they can to buy them.
Yeah.
Somehow people can come up with the money when they really want to buy that car,
Right.
or so
Right.
a lot of times people have excuses of why something's too expensive to invest in, or a class or a course or seminar. But if they really wanted to change their life and the pain of staying the same
Mm.
was more, or I guess,
No, the
is
other
that
way.
right?
Go ahead. The other
The
way.
other
But
way,
go
you
ahead.
have to want it more than the pain that it causes you. I don't know.
Well, what you're trying to say is that it's more painful to change than to stay kind of how you are. Like change is painful, right? It's
Yes. So
difficult.
the moment that it's more painful to stay the same than to
Correct.
change is when you're going to change. That's
Exactly. There
exactly.
you go.
I was
Bam.
like, man, I forgot exactly how that quote goes, but
But it's
I,
true. No, it's true. It's
it's
true.
true
And you
because
know that
sometimes the
from your
pain
own
to change is
story.
more.
Like
Yeah.
your own stuff. I mean, dude, you had a great job. You were making, 70 something grand. You had a nice savings, right? You were comfortable,
Yeah.
right? You
Yeah.
young man, single, live like you living a life.
Like I
But
quote unquote had made it for
right,
where I was at the
right.
time.
Yeah, exactly.
I
And
thought
that was
I arrived.
exactly. But there was that thing gnawing inside of you saying, Chris, there's something else there.
You're meant to
There's another
do
place.
more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And
And
so
that's the funny thing is because at one point that was my goal and that was what I wanted to get to. And once I got there, there became that uncomfortability
yeah,
of the situation and the status quo. And that's where I started to think like, it's not all about the money because now I have the quote unquote money that I was shooting for. But I started to think bigger and, reading books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, 4 Hour
yeah,
Work Week. Those are the things that really changed my mindset on, man, I'm still here trading time for money ultimately
yes.
versus doing something like a commission based or sales based or value based role where I can divorce myself from having to trade time for money. That was the biggest gripe that I had with corporate
Yeah.
America.
Yeah, that's a big gripe, and
Yeah.
it's a real gripe. But
Having to go through traffic. We talked about that last time, having to sit
yeah,
through traffic and go to a job and sit at a desk. When today's day and age, you could do everything remotely. We're here in our home offices. You're in your home office again, right?
I'm in my home office. That's
Okay, because
right.
you got a little bit of a different background than when we last spoke as well. I think you were at
Oh,
the music
I
side.
was in my no, I was in my music. I was in my studio, my
You were in
music
the
studio.
studio, right?
Yeah, this
Yeah,
is a office upstairs. My wife and I share this office, but this is like an
awesome.
office upstairs. Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember I was like, okay, I don't remember seeing the Great Sleep poster
Oh
behind you.
yeah, no, that's my so another dude. I'm doing too many businesses. That's my other little.
That a product based
Yeah,
business?
it's a sleep CBD and a melatonin.
Cool, cool.
Yeah, my little
CBD
formulation.
and melatonin. Yeah.
Yeah, you want to go to sleep, take that. www.naturalrx.com. You can check
That's
it out.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know CBD products are becoming bigger. I met someone recently who opened up a CBD shop. He works in real estate at like his day jobs at the multiple listing service in Houston called
Yeah.
HAR, I guess, but he also has a CBD shop
That's
in
great.
the South Side
Good
which
for
his
him.
wife runs, which is really cool.
Yeah, good for him. Good for
Yeah,
him.
so
Yeah, I
people
love those
people are
stories.
starting to get more entrepreneurial and realize that you need to have diverse streams of income and not rely on one single source. Because if that source dries up, you're in trouble.
You're in trouble, man. You're in trouble. Or
Yeah.
even if the source doesn't dry up, like you might get sick. You
Right.
can't, and you
What if you
can't.
can't work anymore?
Right,
Yeah.
you can't.
You've got
Well,
to learn how to develop those extra streams.
I was listening to this. I think it was. Oh, it was. We keep talking about. Since the real, we keep talking about Grant Cardone, but he was talking about some guys that he knew that were making like 850,000 a year, and they just got fired. They went from
Yikes.
850,000 a year to zero. And his point was if they owned a couple properties or some businesses, that no one could ever do
It
that to
wouldn't
them.
be a big deal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's crazy. It's
Because
crazy.
at the end of the day, you could still be a high paid individual, but that's still that source. Once it dries up, it requires your time in order for you to get paid that. If you're able to invest in a few properties where you get that quote unquote mailbox money every month from tenants, or
Yeah,
you have some kind of affiliate commission income coming in monthly, subscription service business, something like
yeah.
that, you have some kind of predictable, steady income regardless of what happens to your job or the
Right.
economy or whatever.
Right. I mean, for people listening, if you want some entrepreneurial motivation, just think about this: that when you work for someone, they literally control your life. If they
Yeah.
decide to fire you, I mean, they could fire you. Maybe you have some recourse, maybe you don't, but they have the ability to do that and completely upend and change your circumstances just based off what off nothing. You work
Yeah.
for even a large company. Um, my wife works for J&J. They recently fired a bunch of people. She wasn't fired, thank God. But and we're married, so that's part of the benefit of being married. But I mean, those people that were fired, they've got to, they've got to go find another job. So to be at someone else's basically beck and call, someone else's be under somebody else's control, to me is way more than enough entrepreneurial motivation. So,
Definitely.
just take that. I mean, for people that are listening, can you imagine if you went into your job tomorrow and your boss was like, you know what, we don't need you anymore, just like that. And you got kids, you got mortgage. Just when else it hit me, Chris? This was like maybe 6 months ago. Remember when they had the government shut down
Yeah.
and people didn't get their checks for like, I think it was 2 pay periods, and just 2 pay periods, people would like having to sell their cars and like eat ramen, and it was crazy. Now some of that is because we talk about financial literacy, people not saving, putting their money in appropriate buckets and doing that kind of stuff. But separate from that, the issue that we're talking about, entrepreneurial motivation, like who the hell wants to go through that? I don't get a check from this external source, so now I'm having to
I don't get to eat.
Right, I'm eating ramen, or I got to sell my car. I got to walk to work. Like I can't afford to buy gas. What?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yo.
That's definitely being in a bad spot. If you're living paycheck to paycheck and relying on a single stream, then it's time to start thinking a little more creatively and doing a little more work after work to make those streams and set them up.
That's motivation enough.
That absolutely is.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, man, we've talked about a lot of great stuff here: mindset, your story, overcoming. I guess we haven't really talked about maybe overcoming like a challenge, right? So, do you have an example of one challenging thing that you had to muster up all the courage and faith in you to overcome?
Is it doesn't even be business related, or is it personal?
Personal, because a lot of business is about mindset, right? If you're fighting those demons within, that affects everything in your life. So, yeah, feel free to go personal, business, whatever you want.
I think for me, the biggest lesson, the lesson I learned, and I'll go through this quick story, but I learned a lesson on the personal side, but it's something that I use in business, which is, don't be afraid to, it's not even stick to your vision, but I'll say this: knowing who you are is important, and knowing what you want is important. Sometimes we allow other people to dictate what's important to us because we've allowed them to, for whatever reason, something going on in our psychology. But as a business person, it's really important that you just really know who you are and what you want. So for me, I was married before this. I'm in my second marriage now, happily married. And the net of it all was that I allowed this other person to sort of dictate what was important. And our relationship essentially imploded when I started to wake up and say no, or realize that I don't want that. Right. And this was like maybe 3 or 4 years in, and we ended up getting a divorce. Now I'm truncating the story because it's very long, but the net of it is, I was in a situation, I was in a relationship with somebody where they basically had the reins and I was allowing them to pull me whichever way. And realized ultimately that I actually had all the power. And that's the funny thing I always talk about with leadership. People, they look at somebody like Trump or Obama, who are any powerful person, right? The person is only powerful because the people under him have decided to make him powerful. It's a position.
Yeah.
It's when you think you're like underneath someone, or someone's over you, or someone has control over you, no one has control over anybody. You're giving that person that authority over you. Exactly. And so
that's so true.
I learned that, but then more so I learned that, like, who the hell is Seku? What does Seku want? What does Seku want in his life?
And you can reinvent yourself too, right? Like I just posted it on my story today. I said, who do you want to be today?
Yeah.
Like you can decide who you want to be today. You can change it if you don't like the story.
Exactly. For sure. No, that's my license plate says one life to live. And it's
that's awesome.
One LF, 2 LV. And it's so important, to reinvent yourself, but to really attack each day with some sort of gusto and passion,
and purpose.
Purpose. Because, like I said, my grandmother just passed away. She was 90 years old. She lived a great life. She wasn't sick when she died. And then on the other spectrum, not to get so morbid here, but on the other spectrum, I have a cousin whose funeral I'm going to today, who's my age, was driving his son to school and just had a heart attack, died, 41 years old. So life's short, man. Like
Yeah.
this thing is like that, and
And the thing
anything can
is,
happen.
tomorrow is not promised either, right?
No,
Like, I,
no,
I'm
tomorrow's not
guilty of this
promised.
too. I
5 minutes
think,
is not
oh,
promised.
you're right. I always tell my mom, I'm like, hey, bus could come through my house right now, go through 3 bedrooms and kill me right here. The chances, I don't know. Maybe a plane's coming out of the sky or a comet. You never know.
Right. Never
And
know.
I get stuck in that mind frame too, where I'm like, I just turned 29 recently. I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna die when I'm like 98. I already have all this
I
stuff
like
planned
that.
out, right?
Great.
So I visualize having a long, happy, fruitful life, but at the same time, I could maybe tomorrow I won't be here, and that's the scary thing.
Yeah.
And we get these wake up calls with social media. It's easy to see, like, whoa, I remember meeting that kid a year ago. It's crazy, and he just passed away or whatever. For example, I worked with a guy at HEB. It's a grocery store here when I was 16 or 17, and he was this Polish kid who was about my same age as me. And I didn't really know him that well other than my summer working there bagging groceries, or I was probably there for about a year. And he actually passed away in a motorcycle accident a couple of years after that at like the age of 20.
Yeah.
He was 19 or 20. And I went to the funeral because I felt like I kind of knew him. We had some mutual friends, and that was tough because you think about the could have, should have, would have if he had been wearing a helmet, if he didn't have a motorcycle, if he wasn't there on that street that day, maybe he would still be here today. And that scares me too, because my brother has a motorcycle. So it could happen to anybody at any time.
Yeah.
But yeah, tomorrow's not promised. So you got to live every single day to the fullest for sure, and know what your purpose is.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, if people listening have any type of religion, like, God, creator, whoever, that person, that entity didn't put us here to be miserable. Right.
Yeah.
They want us to be happy and abundant. So try to live that way.
I love that word.
Abundance, man.
It's such a big thing. Abundance. We talked about that on your show too, the abundance versus scarcity. And
oh yeah, the mindset.
It really does feel good to have that abundance mentality, because even in my low points when I didn't have a whole lot of money and I had the credit card debt piled up and whatnot, I started to give a little more freely without being such a penny pincher. I gave a kid who filled up air in my tires, a discount tire. They'll fill up air in your tires for free if it's low. I tipped them like $5, which is like pretty good for a minute of tire filling.
Yeah.
And it's marketed as free. You're not really required to tip or anything. And so, and again, going back to perspective, millionaires and stuff are like $5. It's like nothing. You should have made it 50. And I, of course, hope to get there one day.
That's $300 an hour.
Yeah, for sure. But the thing is that, like, when you start to give more abundantly and you know that money is something that can be created quickly, if you're focusing on it and you're adding value, you're not as concerned about giving $5 or $50 or $500 away, because you know you can generate that.
Yeah.
And when you're in that spirit of giving and abundance, you're less in that scarcity mindset where you're worried about how you're going to pay your bills and make your next income or commission check. And it's a really powerful place to be. So that's one thing I challenge people in the audience, is to try to give a little more money away, donate to charities more often, and you'll be surprised at how good you feel, because you are a money magnet, right? Law of attraction. Tell yourself that.
Yeah. I also
amazing things happen.
I'll tell the listeners, like, know your money. If you don't know your money, know your money. Meaning, be intimately aware of like how much you're actually making, how much you're actually spending. And the reason I say that is because
have a budget.
Budget is important, but to your point, I think, and I'm only saying this because it happened to me. Once you actually look at how much you actually have, you're like, oh, okay. Like I've actually got more than I think I do. Like this $5 to this kid is not going to kill me. So some of it is just like being aware, education. Like I started doing that recently, and it was like, oh wow, okay. It just kind of frees you up, frees you up.
Yeah. And I've got a friend who has everything tracked down to the T. He knows how many pennies came in today. Like he knows down to the penny how much money came in and out of his accounts today, which is that's next level. And hopefully in my next mastermind group meeting, I'd like to get a conversation to see how he does that effectively.
Yeah.
Because it's great to have that level of clarity of like, here's where I'm bleeding out the most. Do I need that? And there's apps out there too, like Clarity Money. is one of them that
Mhm.
shows you what your top spending categories are. So it can kind of use technology to highlight where you might be spending too much or have subscriptions that you don't even utilize.
Yeah.
And
Mint.
that level of clarity can be helpful as well. Mint is another one.
It's another
Yeah.
one. Yeah, I've used Mint.
So
Okay.
there's lots of good stuff out there, but
I'm glad you
man,
mentioned the mastermind. People listening, if you can join a
get around people. Yeah,
mastermind, man. I mean, it magnifies and multiplies your success. You
it
can you
really
can
does.
speak to that.
Well, because it's just you're leveraging the power of other people. Like we're all going out here in the world. You and I, we're reading books, listening to podcasts, meeting new people, getting new ideas, and so are all the other people who are in your mastermind group. If you were to join one,
Right.
and so whenever you get together every 2 weeks or once a month or whatever it is, it's amazing to see like all these ideas that I just spent the last 2 weeks finding and searching for. Maybe somebody else has other missing pieces of the puzzle, and together we can it's like the Power Rangers. What's that guy called? The Megatron or something or
You talking about Voltron?
Megazord.
Megazord.
I
Oh,
think it's Megazord, right? Where all like the dinosaurs come together and they create
right.
that one big robot. Like that's
Yeah.
essentially what all our bits and pieces of knowledge can do.
Yeah.
They can combine and create a force that's unstoppable and take down the bad guy at the end of the day.
That's right. That's right. And the bad guy is his name is laziness.
Laziness. Yeah. Laziness and negativity and self-doubt. That's all.
Yes.
Those are all the bad guys.
That's right. You want to knock him out,
Yeah.
give him an elbow. Boom. Take that elbow. Take this elbow to the
Yeah.
head.
Definitely. Definitely. Man, so what would be one key takeaway that you want our audience to take away from today's episode?
Key takeaway. The key takeaway will be the truth will set you free if you let it.
Oh, that's
You
so
know,
it. Yeah, mind blown. I love that line.
just know yourself. Be honest with yourself. Be honest with your surroundings. Know what's going on inside and outside. Meaning, how you legitimately feel about things, and make it important. And don't ignore it. Accept it. If you're not good at a particular thing, accept that, and either hire somebody to do it for you or get better at it. Because
Yeah.
it's all about just transparency. Just if you're clear and honest, it starts with knowing who you are and what you want, what I said before. But then if
Right.
you allow the truth to guide you, you'll get where you need to go. Because if you run into a door, that door is there for a reason. It's trying to teach you something. You can either learn from it, or be mad at it, right? But if you're mad at it, you're not accepting that truth. So
Definitely.
accept the truth, let the door teach you what it's going to teach you, and then the door will disappear and you can keep moving. So
I love that. That is extremely powerful. The truth will set you free if you let it. And a lot of times people got to think about it. It's easy to say these cool little quotes here and there, and then people might just dismiss it. But if you really think about it and dissect it, you can see how powerful things like that can really be.
yeah.
So, man, I love that quote.
Thank you.
So, where can our audience go to find you, to listen more, to check out your podcast?
Sure. So it's the Truth Prescription Podcast. The Truth Prescription Podcast is on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, iHeartRadio. I think I'm even on Pandora. Yeah, I'm on Pandora.
Nice.
The website is truthprescription.com. There's more information on there, more insights and info about me, and some free information. I actually took some of that from your website. I got some free
Yeah.
information
I
there.
love that. I got like free
Some
guide and stuff, freebie.
resources. Yeah, absolutely. And the Instagram is at the Truth Prescription.
Awesome. And I'll link all of that up in the show notes for our audience to go check you out. And
Appreciate it.
everyone, make sure to go listen to the podcast recently where I was featured on there as well. Because it's interesting every time to see every new interview. You and I, we probably level up each time and we share new things, new ideas.
Yes.
And it's interesting to see as the story progresses, because it's a lot different than the first podcast that we ever did, right?
Sure. Yeah, very different. It was good.
Continuing to level up.
You're a good host, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, I really enjoyed this episode, and I know we had a little more time. I didn't want to cut you short or anything. It's just like we talked about that real estate deal that's on the phone. Like I got a couple hours to make it to make sure it doesn't fall apart. So
good.
I I probably should have turned my phone upside down, but I keep seeing like missed calls and texts. And
Right,
so,
right. All
um,
good. Listen, this is what it's about. This is the
yeah,
motivation. This is the motivation. Get this deal done. Close it.
absolutely. I know. And then I look at the commission when I need motivation. I look at the commission tied to it, and I'm like,
That's
I
right.
don't want that number to disappear.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Well, hey,
Absolutely.
Dr. G, this has been
Yes.
amazing. Thank you
Yes,
so
sir.
much for taking your time to jump on this show. And
Sure.
if you're ever in Houston, hit me up and I'll hit you up when I'm in New York.
I actually have a friend that lives in Houston, so it may be
Really?
sooner than you think. Yes.
Look, I'm down. We'll grab some coffee or whatever.
Absolutely. All
All
right,
right,
man.
man. Hey,
Thank
all
you.
the best.
All right. Take care.